The weight of impossible choice. Vivian Torres pressed her trembling fingers against the mahogany desk in the attorney's office, her eyes fixed on the documents that could change everything. Outside, rain hammered against the windows of the downtown building, matching the storm raging inside her chest. The cello case leaning against her chair felt like an anchor, a reminder of the life she was about to sacrifice. For 6 months, she had watched her father fade, his once vibrant spirit dimmed by the cancer ravaging his body. The experimental treatments offered hope, but hope came with a price tag that made her stomach turn. Attorney Rebecca Morrison adjusted her glasses, her expression carefully neutral. Vivian had known Rebecca since college, which made this meeting both easier and harder. The woman across the desk understood the desperation driving Vivian to consider something so extreme. The collection notices had evolved from warnings to threats, and the hospital made it clear that without immediate payment, her father's treatments would cease. Vivian had already sold everything of value except her cello, the instrument her grandmother had given her before passing. Music had been her salvation through the darkest days, but even passion couldn't pay medical bills that climbed higher each week. Rebecca slid a cream-colored envelope across the desk. The name embossed on it belonged to someone Vivian had only seen in business magazines and technology conferences. Dominic Ashford, founder of Nexus Innovations, whose breakthroughs in renewable energy had made him one of the most influential entrepreneurs under 40. His face appeared regularly in Forbes and Tech Review, always with that same controlled expression that revealed nothing. But what would someone with his wealth and success want with a struggling musician barely keeping her head above water? The explanation made Vivian's head spin. Dominic's grandmother had established a trust with conditions straight out of a vintage novel. To access his full inheritance before turning 40, he needed to be married for 1 year minimum. The elderly woman believed marriage built character and forced people to consider something beyond their own ambitions. She had passed away 3 months ago, and the trust would activate on Dominic's 36th birthday into weeks. He needed a wife, and he needed one fast. More importantly, he needed someone who wouldn't confuse the arrangement with romance or develop expectations beyond the contract terms. Rebecca explained the offer with clinical precision. 1 year of marriage, residence in his home, appearances at necessary social functions. In exchange, all of Vivian's father's medical debts would be erased, future treatments fully covered, and she would receive enough money at the contract's end to restart her music career without financial worrying. The sum made her dizzy. It represented more than she could earn in 15 years of performances and teaching combined. Her father could get the care he desperately needed. She could breathe without the constant crushing weight of impossible choices. But the cost felt steep in ways that transcended money. Vivian would be selling a year of her life, living with a stranger, pretending to be someone's wife while maintaining careful emotional distance. She thought of her parents, married for 32 years, their love evident in every glance and gesture. They had built something real and lasting, something that made the hard times bearable. What she was considering felt like a mockery of everything they represented. Yet her father's next treatment was scheduled in 10 days, and the hospital administrator had made the situation brutally clear during their last conversation. The meeting with Dominic happened faster than Vivian expected. 3 days later, she stood in the lobby of Ashford Tower, feeling utterly out of place among the marble floors and abstract sculptures worth more than her childhood home. Her best concert dress, a simple black number she wore for auditions, felt inadequate in a space designed to intimidate. Security directed her to a private elevator with mirrored walls that reflected her anxiety back at her. The ride up felt eternal, each floor bringing her closer to a decision that would alter the trajectory of her life. The elevator opened directly into Dominic's office, and Vivian's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that made the city look like a toy model spread out below. The space combined cutting-edge technology with warm natural materials, screens displaying complex data streams alongside bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. It suggested depths beyond the tech genius persona, hints of someone who valued knowledge beyond quarterly profits. Dominic stood at the windows with his back to her, speaking rapid French into a phone. He was taller than she expected, with broad shoulders under a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark brown hair was slightly disheveled, as though he ran his hands through it when stressed. When he turned to face her, Vivian felt the air shift in the room. He was younger than business magazines suggested, with angular features and startling green eyes that assessed her with unnerving intensity. A thin scar traced his right eyebrow, the only imperfection in otherwise symmetrical features. This was not the untouchable billionaire from magazine covers. This was a man carrying burdens of his own, facing pressures she could only imagine. Something about that realization made him more real, more human than she had expected. Dominic crossed the room with measured steps, ending his call and extending his hand. His grip was firm and warm, his palms slightly calloused in a way that surprised her. She had expected soft hands, not ones that suggested he built things himself despite his wealth. His voice was deeper than she anticipated, with a slight roughness that hinted at too many late nights and insufficient sleep. He thanked her for coming and confirmed that Rebecca had explained the situation adequately. His directness was refreshing, though weeks of careful euphemisms from everyone else in her life. Vivian found her voice, though it felt foreign in her throat. She acknowledged understanding his need for a wife to access his inheritance, and that he was willing to pay generously for the appearance of marriage without its reality. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes at her bluntness, something that might have been appreciation for her honesty. He gestured toward the seating area near the windows, and they sat with careful distance between them. The city stretched out below like a promise or a warning, depending on perspective. He explained what he would expect from her with the measured tone of someone presenting a business proposal. She would live in his penthouse, though separate bedrooms would ensure privacy for both of them. They would need to attend social functions together, perhaps 15 events over the year, including family gatherings for major holidays. The goal was creating the appearance of a believable marriage without requiring actual intimacy. The word hung between them, loaded with implications neither seemed ready to address directly. Vivian felt heat creep up her neck, but forced herself to maintain eye contact. When boundaries begin to blur, moving into Dominic Ashford's penthouse felt like stepping onto a movie set where everything was too perfect to be real. Vivian's entire apartment could have fit inside the guest suite's bathroom, and she spent the first night terrified of breaking something worth more than her annual income. The space was beautiful in a minimalist way, all clean lines and neutral tones with enough warmth in the textiles to keep it from feeling sterile. Maria, Dominic's housekeeper and the only live-in staff member, helped her unpack with gentle efficiency, offering reassurance that Dominic was far less intimidating than he appeared. The wedding ceremony happened with startling speed at City Hall. Vivian wore a simple ivory dress Maria had insisted on purchasing, while Dominic appeared in a dark suit that probably cost more than her cello. The vows felt hollow, words recited to a judge who had performed hundreds of similar ceremonies, but probably none quite as transactional as theirs. When Dominic slipped the platinum band onto her finger, his hands were steady, while hers trembled. The brief kiss he pressed to her cheek, part of the judge pronounced them married, felt perfunctory, a checkbox marked on a list of requirements. Yet something about that moment felt irrevocable, as though they had crossed a threshold neither fully understood. The first weeks established routines that kept them functioning as polite strangers sharing space. Dominic left before dawn and returned after dark, often eating dinner in his home office while managing international teams across different time zones. Vivian spent mornings with her father, whose color was already improving with the better treatments, and afternoons practicing in the music room Dominic had mentioned she could use. The room became her sanctuary, clearly designed by someone who understood acoustics and respected music. The collection of classical recordings suggested depths to Dominic she had not yet explored. One afternoon, while she was running through scales, Dominic appeared in the doorway still wearing his suit jacket, but with his tie loosened and collar unbuttoned. He looked exhausted, but somehow more approachable, without the armor of perfect professionalism. He admitted he had not known she played piano as well as cello. Vivian explained that piano helped with composition, though cello remained her primary love. When he asked if she would play something, the vulnerability in his request caught her off guard. This was not the billionaire making demands, but rather someone seeking connection through shared appreciation of beauty. She chose a piece her father loved, pouring emotion into each note, while Dominic listened with complete attention. When she finished, silence stretched between them until he cleared his throat and told her it was truly beautiful. Their eyes met across the room, and for the first time since they had met, Vivian saw past the exterior to the loneliness shadowing his features. He was not just a billionaire playing games with contracts and inheritances. He was someone who had sacrificed personal connections in pursuit of success. Someone who recognized beauty, but rarely allowed himself to experience it fully. Their first major social appearance came 6 weeks into the arrangement. The charity gala benefiting arts education programs felt like walking into a different world. Maria had helped Vivian choose an elegant emerald dress that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, and Dominic had insisted on diamond jewelry that made her nervous. When he emerged in his tuxedo and saw her, genuine admiration replaced his usual controlled expression. His compliment felt real rather than obligatory, and her teasing response about him cleaning up well earned a rare smile that transformed his serious features. Throughout the gala, Dominic kept a protective hand at the small of her back, guiding her through crowds of donors and board members with surprising gentleness. Vivian found herself engaged in passionate conversations about arts funding, her natural enthusiasm overcoming her intimidation. When people commented on what a lovely couple they made, Dominic's responses grew warmer with each repetition, his arm pulling her incrementally closer. The evening string quartet performance captured her complete attention, and she did not notice Dominic watching her instead of the musicians until intermission, when he commented that she missed performing. His observation cut deeper than expected. She admitted missing it daily, but explained that practical concerns took priority when music did not pay medical bills. Dominic was quiet for a long moment before asking what if it could do both. Before she could question him, the quartet leader approached, recognizing Vivian from conservatory days. Their enthusiastic discussion of technique and repertoire ended with an invitation to perform at the museum's next fundraiser. Vivian started to decline, but Dominic's hand tightened at her waist as he firmly accepted on her behalf, his tone brooking no argument. Walking to the car afterward, Vivian confronted him about overstepping boundaries. She had given up performing and lacked time to prepare for such a prestigious venue. Dominic stopped on the rain-slicked sidewalk and turned to face her fully. In the streetlight's glow, his features were softer and more open than she had ever seen them. He explained that watching her light up during the performance reminded him why he had built his company in the first place, to solve problems and help people pursue what mattered to them. Her music mattered and should not have to be sacrificed for survival. His use of her first name, which he had largely avoided during their careful cohabitation, sent warmth through her chest. Despite the cool night air, she protested that the arrangement was supposed to remain simple, that complications would only make everything harder when their year ended. Dominic reached up slowly, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and Vivian found herself leaning into the touch, despite every rational instinct screaming warnings. When he suggested that maybe complications were not such terrible things, his voice carried a roughness that had nothing to do with exhaustion. Vivian whispered that they could not blur these carefully drawn lines, though her body betrayed her words by swaying closer to him. Dominic challenged her to tell him to stop, to claim she did not feel the thing building between them, and he would retreat to being the distant businessman who barely acknowledged her at breakfast. But she could not lie, because somewhere between the awkward ceremony and this moment, she had started seeing him as more than a means to an end. She noticed how he remembered she took coffee with honey instead of sugar, how he had started timing his morning runs to coincide with hers, so they could talk about inconsequential things while the city woke around them. She admitted feeling it too. this pull between them that defied logic and contracts. Dominic's smile was gentle and understanding as he confessed that neither did he know if they should pursue it. But for someone who built a career on calculated risks, this felt worth exploring. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to step away and remind him of their boundaries. Instead, Vivian rose on her toes to meet him halfway. The kiss was soft and questioning, more exploration than claim, but the electricity shot through her entire body and awakened something she thought buried under stress and survival. Confronting reality and choosing truth, the weeks following their first kiss transformed their arrangement into something neither had anticipated or planned. Dominic started coming home earlier, often bringing takeout from restaurants Vivian had mentioned wanting to try. They would eat together in the kitchen, as Maria tactfully made herself scarce, talking about everything and nothing in a way that felt easy and natural. Dominic spoke about his work with passion that made his eyes light up, describing innovations that could change lives and solve problems plaguing millions. In turn, Vivian shared her musical journey, the countless practice hours that had defined her childhood, her dreams of performing in concert halls that felt impossibly distant now. Their evenings settled into comfortable patterns. Vivian would practice in the music room, while Dominic worked on his laptop nearby, her cello providing a soundtrack to his coding sessions. Sometimes he would pause to watch her, his gaze intense and appreciative in ways that made her lose her place in familiar pieces. One evening, he set aside his computer entirely and asked her to teach him something, not about playing, but about hearing music the way she heard it. The intimacy of that request stole her breath, because no one had ever asked to enter her world so completely. She instructed him to close his eyes and listen with his whole body rather than just his ears, to feel vibrations and how sound moved through space. She played with everything she had, pouring her heart into each note of a complex piece. When she finished, Dominic sat with his eyes still closed, his expression peaceful in a way she had never witnessed. He opened his eyes slowly and told her he had felt it, the way music built and released like breathing or heartbeats. His understanding, after minutes of what she had tried explaining to people her entire life, felt like a gift she had not known she needed. Dominic closed the distance between them, gently taking her cello, and bowed to set them aside with care. He pulled her close and confessed this was not supposed to happen, that she was meant to be a convenient solution, while he was supposed to be her financial security. But somewhere along the way, she had become the person he most wanted to talk to and share things with and come home to each evening. His words hung in the air between them, profound and terrifying, as Vivian processed what he was really saying beneath the careful phrasing. But their growing connection faced challenges neither had anticipated. One morning, Dominic's expression was troubled in a way that sent alarm bells ringing through Vivian's chest. He explained that his cousin Nathan had raised concerns about their marriage, investigating and talking to people in an attempt to find evidence that their relationship was not legitimate. Nathan resented Dominic's success and believed he did not deserve his inheritance. If the marriage was proven fraudulent, the money would default to Nathan instead. Fear clutched at Vivian's throat as she realized what this meant for her father's treatments and future. Dominic admitted that Nathan had found her father's medical bills and the timing of their payment, preparing to challenge the marriage as a financial transaction rather than a legitimate relationship. The trust lawyers were requesting interviews and documentation, proof that they were actually married in more than just legal terms. Their carefully maintained boundaries, the separate rooms they had only recently abandoned, all pointed to exactly what their marriage had started as, a contract. Vivian asked desperately what would happen if they proved it. Though she already knew the answer, everything would reverse, including her father's treatments. The only solution was making it real in every sense, demonstrating physical intimacy and convincing everyone, including the lawyers, that they had fallen in love. Dominic turned to face her fully, his green eyes searching hers with intensity that made breathing difficult. He confessed this had stopped being an arrangement for him weeks ago, that somewhere between her terrible jokes at breakfast and the way she lost herself in music, he had fallen in love with his contract wife. The question was whether she could be convincing, whether she felt the same way, or if this would always be just business for her. Vivian's heart hammered against her ribs as she processed his confession. She started to speak, then stopped, unsure how to articulate the tangle of emotions in her chest. Dominic quickly told her she did not have to say anything, that he knew this was not part of their original deal. But she interrupted his retreat, blocking his path and asking him to let her process for just a moment. She took a deep breath and admitted being scared, not of pretending for lawyers, but of the fact that it would not be pretending at all. She was scared because she had fallen in love with him too. His expression transformed with hope and relief and joy flooding his features. Into strides, he closed the distance and cupped her face with exquisite gentleness, asking her to say it again. She whispered that she loved him, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. She could not pinpoint when it happened. Maybe that first night he truly listened to her play. Maybe when he remembered small details about her preferences. Maybe it was gradual like water, wearing down stone. But it was real and so intense it terrified her, in the best possible way. The investigation became almost secondary to the shift in their relationship. They faced the lawyer's interviews together, answering invasive questions about personal habits and shared moments and intimate details. Every answer came easily because they were true. They had fallen in love despite intending otherwise, and that truth shone through every interaction. The lead investigator finally closed her file and admitted she had conducted hundreds of these interviews and could spot performances. What they had was unmistakably real, something that could not be faked or manufactured for lawyers. 6 months after the investigation concluded, Vivian performed as featured soloist with the Philharmonic. Dominic sat in the front row, his eyes never leaving her throughout the performance. When she took her bows to thunderous applause, she looked directly at him and poured all her love into that gaze. Backstage, he swept her into his arms and told her she had been transcendent, that he had never been prouder of anyone. She thanked him for believing she could do this, for reminding her that music mattered beyond just survival. Their contract had expired months earlier, divorce paperwork sitting unsigned in a drawer. Neither mentioned it because what they built together transcended legal documents. One evening, Dominic pulled her onto the terrace, where fairy lights twinkled like captured stars, and dropped to one knee. He produced a velvet box, holding a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds, and asked her to marry him again, the real way this time. Not for money or convenience or to satisfy lawyers, but because he loved her more than he thought possible and wanted to spend his life proving that the best decisions were the ones they never saw coming. Tears streamed down Vivian's face as she pulled him to his feet and said yes 1,000 times, though technically they were already married. Dominic grinned and suggested renewing their vows properly with her father there and friends, and all the romance they had skipped initially. 3 months later, they stood in the music room where they first began falling in love, exchanging vows they had written themselves. They promised to support each other's dreams and wreck overly organized plans and choose each other every single day. When they kissed as husband and wife for the first time, it felt like a beginning rather than a continuation of something that had always been destined to become real.